effectively for helping to get patients IVs. Access is obviously very challenging. Here we don't have super obese patients like we do in, I treat in Indianapolis. We measure people by Hoosier units. And so if you were like 2.5 Hoosier units, forget it. You had to have an ultrasound to put an IV in. But it's super easy and effective. We're going to concentrate on the linear probe only today. Before we start and get into the actual line placement, I just want to give a small introduction about the ultrasound machine itself. These are very expensive, $55,000 for this machine here. It's new in the last year. Thank you to the donors that provided that for us, which was super awesome. We had two families, buy one for the ER and buy one for the ICU, which is awesome. And really is a huge upgrade for us. There are 3 probes on the machines we have here. There's a number of other probes. There's a little hockey stick probe. I don't know if you've ever seen those. It's really kind of a small probe, which is kind of like a small version of the linear probe. There's an interventional probe, which we don't have. We don't have the hockey stick probe either, but these are the 3 ones that you'll see us use. And the probes all have different functions. These 2 really have a similar function. This is called the cardiac probe. This has a little bit of a longer wavelength. The longer wavelength is able to penetrate a little bit deeper, but you don't have as good of resolution for the structures that you're imaging. Same thing for this one. It's a curvilinear probe. It just has a little bit different probe here. The way the signal comes out is more like this, as opposed to this being a 4-person beam. This is a little bit more concentrated. This is a little bit more spread out like this. And then the linear probe, which the only one you guys are going to utilize for placement of a line. You'll never use these because they're going to shoot too deep for you, and they're not going to provide the resolution you need for something that's on the surface of the scan or just under the surface of the scan ID. So the basic ultrasound operation is relatively simple. Push the on button. This is going to launch this screen. For these, sometimes if it's been off for a long time, there is not a login that we utilize for this, but if it comes up for the login screen, you just hit OK. So if you think, oh crap, I don't have my login, you're putting in your personal login, no, it's not going to work. Just hit OK. This will get you to this screen. Lots of fancy tools and buttons here. We're going to ignore all of that, aside from you're going to go, oh, Dr. Hesse said ignore all this stuff, but push the linear array button. So when you push the linear, the probe we're going to use here, you're going to hit on that and you're going to say, okay, what am I going to do here? Am I going to do an artery? Am I going to do a vein? You guys are going to be doing veins. This is optimized for venous line placement. If you just hit this by itself and sit, whatever, you can vascular access, upper, lower, it doesn't really matter. You can pick those if you want to. It doesn't really matter that much for the purposes of what you guys are going to be using it. On the side here, you'll see that this is measured in centimeters. Obviously, this measurement here is bigger than a centimeter. This is just what was displayed on here so that you know these are centimeters. It's magnified. So when you see that this says 1, that means 1 centimeter. You guys should not be going for anything greater than a centimeter, probably. You could go down to maybe 2 centimeters, but you're going to need a longer angiocath to do that. So I would target anything for a centimeter. If you want to adjust your depth, you hit the depth button here, and you can move that up or down, and it'll give you a very concentrated view here. And we're going to talk about, once we put the probe on someone's arm, we'll talk about how we're going to approach that and where we want the vessel to be. One last word about the ultrasound. These probes are the most expensive part of the machine. These are at least $10,000 if you drop one. If this drops on the ground and hits the ground and I see it, I will become very upset, because this is what degrades the quality of the image. These have little crystals inside of them, and if they get damaged from a drop, you'll be able to see really quickly. There'll be a shadow on here, and you'll lose whatever field that is. So just be super careful. You don't ever want to put it in this here thinking, oh, it's going to be fine, because it'll fall right through and fall on the floor. So we want to be really careful about that. Try to always put it up here. Make sure if you're going to rest it on the bed, that the tail of this is resting on the surface, and so you don't set it like this and then the tail just goes zip and pulls it right off. So that's the only thing I ask, is just be super careful. On this probe as well, there are little buttons here that can change your depth. You can see by pushing up on the up arrow here, it will change your depth. So if you're actually using this and you want to be able to use it in real time, this one is obviously down, this is obviously up. Another word about the probe. All probes have a notch, or sometimes they'll have a little circle or something on them to designate the direction the probe is supposed to be placed on the patient. I don't like these probes because they have a little sort of a notch in this, a circular notch you can see here. And then on this side, they have this weird sort of, I don't even know what that's called, upside down U, and then this little bevel or raised piece here. So it's a little bit of confusing, right? Which side is supposed to be on the patient's right side? The reality is it's this one. You just ignore this, and I've actually asked the tech, they're going to eliminate this in the next version of these because it's confusing to people. The reason why that's important is because by convention, the notch or this part here always is going to go to the patient's right side or the head, with a few other exceptions which we're not going to talk about today. How do you know that? There's a little bit of a notation here. It's got a little GE, with the red GE, or the, sorry, that's a yellow GE. So you know that this probe is going to be oriented in that direction. Why is that important? If you turn this around, it's like looking in a mirror, right? So when you start moving this around, it's going to be like trying to move your image around in a mirror, and that's confusing. So if you keep it like this, by convention, it's always going to go to the patient's right side or their head. So wherever you're doing this, if you're on the right side, just remember that. It's a subtle thing. You'll know because once you put the probe on somebody and start moving it around, it moves in the opposite direction if you have it backwards. Again, it looks like it's in a mirror. So to review, you're going to do a line on somebody, you're going to come in, you're going to turn this on, you're going to select your vascular probe here, which is this one. You're going to hit this here, you're going to select vascular access if it's not already on, or vein access, it doesn't matter. Then you're going to say, okay, I'm going to adjust my depth. I'm going to go down to probably 2 centimeters is going to be sufficient for you, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And be very careful not to drop this. You're going to orient this to the patient's right side, a little notch, or to their head, either one. Okay, so this probe is ready to go. I always clean the probe like you saw it when we came in with chlorhexidine to make sure that it's super clean. A word about the ultrasound itself and the signal and why and how this works. When you have this, the ultrasound probe, the way the beam is spit out is kind of like, it's like, imagine a broom, right? If this is the tail of the broom here, we're going to sweep with the broom. This is the where all the fibers are kind of together, and you have all the broom has the little straw pieces at the bottom. That's the way the image is going to come out, right? So that shooting electric signal, ultrasound, sonic images outside of that, and whatever it hits bounces back and provides a shadow onto the screen here, which gives you the vessels. This probe is very high intensity, meaning it's shooting out a lot of signal really fast and very shallow to provide that depth. When you move the probe, it's very important. Orientation of the probe is probably the most important thing when you're trying to put in the central line, because that probe signal is coming out parallel with the body of this right here, okay? So that signal is coming straight out. So when you're doing an ultrasound probe, the thing that I tell people that's most important, you have to maintain spatial awareness in terms of how, when you move that probe, how that changes where the signal is cast into the body. You can understand that if you have, I'm trying to think of, so if say you're on this hand here and you're trying to ultrasound these vessels, which you wouldn't need to, but if you put your probe on this and you turn it like this, it's casting that signal at a 45-degree angle. If you turn it like this, that's casting at a 20-degree angle. Why does that matter? Because when you're trying to put your needle in there, the image you're trying to aim for is going to be in a different place if you're like this versus like this. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So that's one of the most important things when you're starting out with ultrasound that you got to realize is that that image is basically in the same direction, parallel for this probe with where that signal is cast. And so if it's like this again, that's straight down. If it's like this, it's 45. And it's the spatial awareness, that's the hardest thing when you're starting to use this for ultrasound guided line placement, is you have to be aware of where is that needle going to meet my signal. Because if your needle's coming in here, say you have this is cast like this, you know, so your signal's coming straight out like this, and you have a needle coming at it. If your angle is like this, and your needle's coming at this angle, it's going to be different than if your angle is like this. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Questions so far? Okay, so one more thing about ultrasound. Ultrasound hates air. If you have any air between the end of this probe and whatever you're aiming for, you're going to have really crappy images. So just make sure that you use plenty of gel to create a good contact surface for when you're going to do your central line. And now that Jen is filming this, we need some more gel.